All right, everyone, welcome back to the GDFL podcast hosted by yours truly, Andrew Korn. With this week, we are doing a power rankings of the entire league going into the 2025 season. 30 trades later and a rookie draft done. We're now here at the start of the season. Joining me today is our reigning champion, Levi Hubbard, and we also have Ryan joining today as well. All right. How you guys doing?
Hello, boys.
I'm doing well.
Oh yeah. Hope everyone listening to this cracks open a cold one, lights up something. Just enjoy this podcast as you're listening to it. This may or may not be one or two parts, maybe even three, depending on how much we yap. I really don't know. This is all unscripted, so without further ado, let's get into okay. Before I get into the actual power rankings, like what we're going to be doing is I'm going to go through every team. We're going to do an overview of players they added, players they traded away, some of their draft picks, where they were standing going into previous seasons, some of their previous season records and outcomes. And then we'll be doing a closer look at everyone's roster and then kind of comparing our notes of where we had everyone ranked.
All
So,
right.
Love it.
yeah, the
It's
high.
about time for football, boys. Can't wait any longer.
No way.
It's the
Yeah.
best time of the year.
It really is.
Yeah, we are 6 days away from the first game as we're recording this on Friday, August 29th. All right. And then, so the team that we all collectively ranked last was Logan. So in previous years, the year one, Logan was our champion. And then in year two, he went 8-6 and was like the 4 or 5 seed. And then last year started 0-5, which kind of derailed the season before it got going, and then went 5-9. Going into the previous seasons, like in the first couple years, I thought he had one of the better top half team going into the season. Last year started a little bit of his tailspin, and now I kind of feel like the wheels are off the wagon. Uh, he didn't really make any trades. He made zero this offseason, and he also really didn't have any draft picks. The two he made, I think, were the 4-9 and 4-10. Got Chiefs running back Brashard Smith and then Quinn Ewers. What are you guys' thoughts on Logan's offseason?
League champ, go for it.
Thank you. I would say now would be a good year to tank. If I'm correct, he has my first this year and his own. Um, can I get a fact check on that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and I just, full disclosure, I don't think I'm a horrible team, but I don't think it's my year to win this puppy again. So I do think he's got the opportunity to get two top six picks in next year's draft. And if he makes the right decision, he'll get rid of some of those guys on his roster that aren't serving him now and start to create something more for the future. But not the best, not pretty easily the worst team in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't really have any more notes other than what's already been said. I include Logan in my bottom tier, which I've named strip it to the studs, and I think you know, I think that the biggest indicator of where Logan is the complacency. You see no key losses, no key additions. It's a destiny of your own fate. And so I think you got to do something, otherwise the wheels fall off. And
Hmm.
we're seeing that right here.
Yeah. When we take a look at his roster, so I have it divided up by position, and then in color for the people who are watching this on YouTube, have highlighted who I'm projecting to be his starters. So at quarterback, we have Jordan Love and Brock Purdy. Running back, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, Zach Charbonnet, and Austin Eckler. At wide receiver, Jordan Addison and Tyler Lockett. And then at tight end, TJ Hawkinson and K. Dotton. And Jordan Addison's also facing a 3 game suspension to start the season. And so, looking at this wide receiver room without Addison, he's going to have Lockett, Cooper, Ray McLeod might be starting for him. That's a bunch of like Tyler Lockett might be the Titans wide receiver too, and that's kind of the best of the rest that he has here.
There's some pieces there that can be moved. I don't think that there's a whole lot there that helps a team that's rebuilding. my recommendation to Logan here is to strip it to the studs and see what you can get for 80% value on just about all of these worthwhile pieces. So someone like Josh Jacobs, you could probably fetch a first from a contender. Jordan Addison, I think, is really the only long-term piece that you have here. I guess the two quarterbacks, they're probably around for a while unless they both have nice contracts. So those are good pieces. You could also try to tear down and get an extra pick, but it's a volume issue at this point in terms of just need more better pieces that are going to be around longer than 2 or 3 years.
There's nothing inspiring going on here. This is not an exciting roster. This is not a boring but productive roster. This is just a roster that's lacking all around.
It'd
Hmm.
be a great roster from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It turns out it was a great roster 3 years ago. Yeah, I mean you nailed it on the head, Ryan. Like I'm looking at this team. Like the only player I don't even think anyone's a must keep. Like I would be willing to move every single one of these players if I were Logan.
Yep.
Again, it all depends on what your return is. Like I think Love, Purdy, and Addison, like I think they're gonna be a little more sustainable pieces for the future. But yeah, like I'm looking at James Conner, Josh Jacobs, and Eckler, and all three of those should be moved in early part of the season, or if not by mid-season. Just gotta hope they stay healthy and actually be able to move them. Um, yeah, there's nothing here that I mean, I don't know how attached Logan is to his players. There's nothing here that I would be too attached to where it's a absolute must keep through a rebuild. I think best case for Logan, he earns the 101 and then trades that into a larger haul just to like add more pieces to this roster. Because even just adding a 101 to this team is really not going to change much. I think he needs a little bit more than just a first overall pick to really turn this thing around.
There's things here that could fetch decent draft capital, though. You look at Josh Jacobs, you could probably get a first plus for Jacobs, for Hawk and I don't know, Eckler, those will fetch something. Same with James Conner. Addison, I bet you could find somebody to pay a first for. But yeah, it's a volume thing here. We need more capital.
Hmm.
He also doesn't listen to the podcast, so Logan has a small penis.
Wayne.
Wayne.
Why?
I'll drink to that, boys. All right. Any final thoughts on Logan's team?
Corn and Levi, what are you drinking? I got a Mile High course going here.
I've got a Shorts local light. It's a first game of the Michigan State football season. Gotta drink the bucket beer.
Yep, very good, very good.
I had a small Manhattan to start, but I'm now going to natural light.
All right.
Very cool.
All right. So the second team, the team we collectively in aggregate have ranked 11th, is Jacob Thomas Pruitt. So Jake's team's been kind of hovering in the middle the last 3 years. He's gone 8-6 in year one, which included a run to the championship, and then has gone 6-8 each of the last 2 years. His preseason power ranking has kind of been all over the place. I mean, this year we were all pretty much in agreement that he's towards the bottom. Similar story with Logan. He didn't trade anyone, and then didn't acquire anyone, obviously, because he didn't make a trade. And then with his draft picks, he took Cam Scatabo, Mason Taylor, DJ Giddens, and then Will Howard. So, what are you guys' prelim thoughts on where Jake's at right now?
I think Scatabo might not have been a prospect I liked, but I think he's a really good addition to the team. I think Mason Taylor was a really good pick for this team. I'm not too big on the other two rookies. Well, I would probably take, if I were Jake, I'd take one of his top two assets, that being Hertz and Chase, and I would break them down into other pieces and just try and have a maybe a retool this season. But I don't think he'll be the worst team in the league. He'll probably be more like 10 or 11 based on his record at the end, but I don't see him going much further than that.
Yeah, I think, what am I trying to say? If there's ever a time to trade Jamar Chase, his value will never be higher. and I'm a big proponent of selling high. Um, I think that Jamar Chase in itself, same with Jalen Hurts, those two guys are going to win you games this year, and I'm not entirely sure that that's the goal when you have a roster build like Jake has. Again, same story with Logan. No key losses, no key additions. You're a little bit of a victim of your own circumstances here.
Hmm. Yeah, so I have Jake's roster pulled up. So I'm projecting his starting lineup to be Jalen Hurts and Daniel Jones at quarterback, just Alvin Kamara at running back. At wide receiver, we have Chase, Marvin Harrison, Jameson Williams, Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, and Christian Kirk. And then at tight end, we have Travis Kelce. Uh, yeah, just like looking at his roster, like a lot of the players he's relying on for points this year are just like aging vets. And 2 years ago, when his team was first starting to not make the playoffs, could have sold high, really high on a lot of these people. I offered Jake a first and a second at one point for Travis Kelce, and he declined it. And don't know what he would be able to fetch in a trade now, considering he's 36. And I'm almost guaranteeing he's retiring this offseason so he can be married to Taylor Swift. I think he'd like his plan was to retire after the Super Bowl and propose to her then. But then because they got their ass whooped, decided he wanted to come back one last time. That's my conspiracy theory of Kelsey. But anywho, other players, it's like yeah, Cup just signed with the Seahawks. I thought he was starting to look a little washed at the end of last year, although he still was pretty productive for fantasy. Same thing with Thielen, we just traded to the Vikings. Was actually more productive last season than I thought. I think he averaged like 11 points a game, like both Cup and Thielen, which kind of surprised me. Like Jake was actually closer to the playoffs last year than I thought. I just look at this team and just like again, similar to Logan, if you just like I don't even think he has to sell off Hurts or Chase if he really doesn't want to. Like he could sell off like Cup, Thielen, maybe get whatever you can get for him, Kelsey, whatever you can get, Kamara, what you can get, and just race to the bottom and then do the same thing, whatever pick you have at the beginning, like whether it's 101, 102, if he can tank that low. Trade him for a haul, and then you just again, same thing as Logan, just needs more pieces. Like
Yeah, I think it's a depth thing here, and you can hang on to Hurts and Chase, but I also it's you got to break a couple assets or one asset down into a couple if you're needing depth. And there's only two pieces here, three maybe if you count Marv, where you can fetch more than a one for one.
That is the big question mark on his roster is does Marv live up to the hype or is he actually a bust? I think he'll be fine personally, but I he that trio of him, Chase, and Hurts can't do it alone.
Yeah,
hmm Yeah, and like Marv by all like he had a fine rookie season. He just didn't have the rookie season people were expecting him to have. Like he had like 900 receiving yards and like I don't know exactly how many catches, but like by all accounts, it really wasn't that bad of a season. It's just
yeah,
when you're
it's fine.
comparing him to Neighbors and Brian Thomas and like Lad McConkey, it just like doesn't look nearly as good in comparison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be concerned about Marv. That's a piece you can't hang on to, but it's a depth thing, and I think you gotta take your licks, so to speak, and tear down, get some more pieces, and hope that they increase in value.
hmm Yeah, maybe we're inspiring some people listening to this to potentially make Jake some offers. 'Cause, yeah, I
I've
don't
been
think.
making them.
Yeah, I don't think Jake's made a trade in a few years now.
I don't
So
think he's made a trade since he traded for Adam Thielen.
yeah, that might have been the last one. I'd really have to
Uh,
look, or it might have been like I traded him Tommy DeVito for a fourth when he needed a quarterback one week. Like that might have been the last one. I really don't remember. All
Bless
right.
his sweetheart.
uh,
Any more thoughts on Jake's team?
nah.
Okay, so we're tied for ninth with our aggregate rankings. We have Sokol. I was a little bit higher on Sokol's team than both of you guys were. Sokol year one went 4-10, but like he had an extremely high points against. His record wasn't really reflective of how good his team was that year. Ended up finishing third in 2023, and then last year started 4-5. Had an extremely difficult schedule to end the year. Kind of saw the writing on the wall, and then had a massive sell-off. And Sokol was again, he was doing what I think Logan and Jake should be doing is he had that massive sell-off, acquired a whole bunch of picks, and then made a whole bunch of moves in the offseason to try and prepare himself for this year. So, I mean, a lot of these picks were traded back and forth between teams. Like what he ended up trading away was the 102, 107, 111, and a future second. I was able to add Travion Henderson and Tyler Warren in the draft. Picked up Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, ETN, Aaron Jones, and Stephon Diggs in trades. Yeah, like Sokol, like definitely revamped his roster of what it was at the end of last season. It was looking pretty gross, but like I think that's the way to rebuild is accumulate a whole bunch of picks, strip it down to the studs, which he did, and then try and go forward from there.
Yeah, I agree with the blueprint, so to speak, with what Sokol did the last 9 months, I guess we'll call it. I think that my lower ranking is just taking on some running backs that are near to the end of their prime and starting to decline, as well as Diggs. And if you're stripping down to the studs, I think that that was. It's not that the roster in itself is bad or even really deserving of the ninth overall ranking. It's the risk associated with what could be a quick decline.
Got his roster pulled up here. His quarterbacks right now are Jared Goff and Bryce Young. Running back, I have his starters as Jonathan Taylor, Travion Henderson, and Aaron Jones. Wide receiver, have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Stephon Diggs, and Khalil Shakir. And then at tight end, I have it as Evan Ingram penciled in right now, just because I think in redraft leagues he's going a little bit higher than Warren. They're probably pretty similar in ADP though, so that could be a coin flip either way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like looking at what you said, like he did acquire a lot of aging running backs. I do think getting Travion Henderson in the draft was really good for him to
Yeah.
like help get some much needed youth in at that position. Um, Luckily, as long as these guys, I mean, if his season's going poorly, but those guys are still scoring good points, he should still be able to trade them for something. If like, because I mean, he's shown he's capable of doing that too, where if things are going south, he's willing to pull the plug. So I think he would be able to sell some of them, pull the plug on the season if he needs to.
In in his favor, I'd say that Sokol has a really good core here. Signs are pointing up for Bryce. I like to believe that he's a good quarterback in the NFL. We all believe in Jared Goff as our quarterback. Travion Henderson has been lighting it up in the preseason. Signs are pointing good there. Amon Ra is a rock. Um, Tyler Warren is a really good piece to add to. So I like the core piece. I don't know if I necessarily would have made every move that Sokol made, but I'm not the owner of Sokol's team, and if this roster stays healthy, I think it's better than where I ranked it.
It's a fine strategy. There is a rumor going around right now that Mixon might not play at all this season potentially, or at least half a season. That feels like a pretty big blow to have to take on with this roster. But I also think Taylor is a lot better than the community sees him. I think Travion Olave and St. Brown are all easy starters too. So he really could end up top four by the end of the season. But for now, he was my number 10.
Hmm. I can't remember if I think I had him at nine. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, like if I mean looking at his receivers, like I think Amon-Ra the Lions one, Olave is the Saints one, Diggs is the Patriots one, Shakir going into the season is the Bills one. Like he has some number one receivers, and like they definitely have like there is some ceiling here, and like I think has a safe-ish floor with some of the players he has. Again, it's just like it's not the sexiest roster in the world, is the light way to put it.
I feel like it's part of my ranking was the long term aspects as well too. It wasn't just who's the most ready to win right this second.
Hmm. All right. Any more thoughts on Sokol's team?
Where did you guys rank Sokol, if I may ask?
10.
Yeah, I think both of you had him at 10. I had him, I think I had him at 9.
Okay.
Okay. So then the other team tied for ninth is Levi. So Levi, you had a pretty rough first 2 years in the league, and then last year snuck into the playoffs at 7-7, and then ended up being our league champion. Hold that belt up with pride and honor, Levi. All right. Yeah.
Well deserved.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you.
There's barely enough room on my screen to keep track of everything Levi did this offseason, and I really hope I didn't miss anything. You didn't make nearly as many trades as you made last year, which made it a little bit easier for me when I was trying to keep track of everything. But yeah, I think I
You're
have everything
welcome.
covered. Yeah, so like just like looking at like the big things that you did, like at least in terms of trades, you traded for a ton of draft picks as evidenced by like the 12-ish names that are listed in the draft pick
Three whole
section.
lines.
Yeah. Key additions, you pretty much traded away all of your running backs and then added a bunch of wide receivers was what like ended up in terms of like net of vet players. And then like with your draft picks, you had used a lot of those early picks on running backs, and then that like second and third round getting running back, receiver, and tight end, and then concluded it with getting Shedeur Sanders. So yeah, Levi, you want to walk us through your offseason?
After finally winning my first fantasy dynasty title point blank, I really enjoyed it, but my next challenge is to draft a team and win the title with it. So that was my goal this offseason. Um, and it went fine. It was hard to give up guys like T. Higgins, Jonathan Taylor, James Cook, but I really like the payout I got. I'm really excited about every name you see that I drafted. I have some hope for. Um, it was a unique strategy to say the least, but because I got lucky with Bo Nix and Drake May, I feel very solid about where I am moving forward. Um, we all know Rashi Rice isn't going to play the first 6 games of the year, so really we're going to see what we can do in those first 6 games. And things could swing right for me. I certainly don't have winning and getting into playoffs crossed out this year. But at a first glance, it does not seem likely. And that's fine because that's not necessarily the expectation moving forward. I'm happy with where I'm at, though.
Yeah, I feel like as a competitor to Levi or a league mate of Levi, the one thing that we've seen over the course of this dynasty is that Levi is very willing to pull the trigger on a move. Um, and it really worked out for him this past season, squeaking into the playoffs and getting the right guys to go win that chip. Um, so can't credit him enough for what were you 1-12 or something the
Yeah,
year prior,
one
and
and
really,
13, and
yeah.
that roster was stripped to the bare bones.
I remember it was a league-wide issue of let's go Levi, go get a win. Let's and it was down to like the last 4 or 6 weeks that you finally got that win. Um, so yeah, can't credit you enough for the turnaround. Um, I like the additions that you made this offseason. I think that wide receivers tend to insulate in value a bit better than running backs. So kind of turning aging in their prime running backs into young running backs and younger wide receivers. That seems like a good process. I think, there's a reason that we ranked Levi at this 8 to 10 range. And I think that there's a lot of question marks in terms of immediate output. But there's a lot to like here from a dynasty building standpoint.
Yeah, so at least for me, I was more so ranking the teams based off how I think they're going to be performing this year, and I do have Levi at 11. And a lot of it is like compared to like Jake and Sokol, like both Jake and Sokol, I guess Jake Sokol. But anyway, both Jake and Sokol with their rosters, like have those hammers, like they have Hurts and Chase, and there's Jonathan Taylor and Amon Ra. And I just I mean, Rashi Rice could be. He's also suspended the first 6 weeks. And so like in terms of like the like true stud players, like I think that's where I had Levi below those guys is like some of these guys absolutely could be. It's just are they going into the season? Like they're not in my eyes.
I would agree. I don't think either of those assessments are unfair. Again, I'm cool with it, man, because I really don't think I'm going to make too much noise this season. I just think there's a possibility. So
I was
And you get to
underestimating.
carry that big heavy belt on your shoulder all season. So
it has been weighing me down, I will say.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. I was gonna
I'm
say I had you ranked 10th going into last season. I'd underestimated you, and you just never know what's gonna happen in fantasy football.
well, big thanks to Jacoby Myers. We owe him one.
Hmm.
Go
Yeah,
Holsteins.
yeah. Also, thanks Stun for not starting Cooper Rush, going with the receiver over that quarterback as well.
Absolutely.
Love you, Stun. Just had to get that jab in there. Okay, so in our consensus rankings, we have Ryan at 8th. You've had a winning record every year in the league. In the first 2 years of the league, I had you as the preseason number one. I think you're the two seed both of those years, and then fell just short in the playoffs. And you made some trades this offseason, but it was like mostly you just like trading the same picks back and forth. Like the only like major and minor additions you had to your roster, you added Trey Benson in a second in terms of like established players. Traded away Zay Flowers and Diggs, and then Carr retired. And then, yeah, you had three of the top seven picks and took Mario Hampton, Ted McMillan, and Emeka Egbuka. So if you want to talk through that at all.
Yeah, I've placed fourth every year, which first 2 years was a letdown, and last year was, I think, exceeding expectations. Um, in terms of just process the last 3 or 4 years or however long it's been, I knew that during the draft, I drafted a team that was in their prime slash moving out of their prime. And so I think that I've been willing to pull the trigger a day early, so to speak, as opposed to a day late, and try to capitalize at maximum value. Um, so, I mean, it's all been a part of the 3 to 5 year plan. I'm really pumped about the three draft picks I was able to walk away with in the draft this year. Um, I think that the sky's the limit for this team when you have two top five quarterbacks and easily the best quarterback room in the league. And so it's just a matter of finding depth throughout the flex spaces and I think that last year we exceeded expectations and we lost Zay Flowers but picked up some really good pieces. So I'm excited.
Hmm. Yeah, at least like from my point of view, like Najee having that firework incident like makes Hampton a lot more appealing going into the season because Najee just didn't practice and he's not a holdover from the previous regime. Like he's a new player coming in, new to the system. So I think that ended up being a great offseason for Hampton. And then like all the news out of Bucks camp with Chris Godwin's injury being as mysterious as it is, like Egbuka is probably sliding in to be their number two receiver right away. So like there's a chance that I think all three of these guys could perform well early.
That's the
Baker
hope.
seems to love him too.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, looking at your roster at quarterback, you have Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. At running back, you have Amari and Hampton, DeAndre Swift. At wide receiver, have Ted McMillan, Egbuka, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, Keon Coleman. And then at tight end, you have Sam Laporta. Yeah, so at least for me, what prevented me from moving you up higher is, I mean, you again, if we're going based off ceiling, your ceiling's higher than eighth, but like just like the bottom end of your starting lineup is a little shakier in my opinion with like guys like Keenan Allen, Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman's a pretty boom bust receiver, and I'm lower on than consensus. I think just he doesn't get that many receptions a game, so just kind of relying on the big play. And then Keenan Allen's kind of old at this point. I really don't know what to make of the Chargers receiver room right now after Ladd. There's a whole bunch of names of guys that I like, just yeah, don't know who's actually going to step up in that group.
I'd more so agree. Clearly, there's a gem at tight end. Clearly, you have two gems at quarterback. Running back seems to be a handful of darts, and then we're all assuming Omarion's going to be a gorilla, absolute G running back. Receiver seems a lot better post draft. Keon Coleman, very boom bust type of profile, but I also really like Quentin Johnston. I have not given up on Quentin Johnston And I think it's still possible he could have a ball out season.
I think there's a lot of variance with this roster in terms of immediate production. It's a matter of are these young guys projects or are they producing, right? So someone like Keon or Roma Dunze, they had maybe disappointing rookie seasons in terms of production, but there's some really good reporting coming out of their camps. We'll see if that actually turns into fantasy points or if that's all just fluff. Um, I'm higher than most on Emeka Buka. I think that's a receiver that I've actually been scouting for about 2.5 years. So I'm stoked to get him on the roster, and everything out of Bucks Camp Corn, I think, like you mentioned, is really really good. Um, there's a lot of dart throws at running back behind DeAndre Swift, but the assumption is that some of those don't play out and some of them do play out, and I think that that's really the bet that I'm making. Um, I think what I really like about this roster, though, is that the quarterback room is just it's better than any other room, and the sky's the limit with it. So um, helps for the short and the long term.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a high floor every week if you have two quarterbacks putting 20 points a game. Like you don't have to rely nearly as much on your other players. Yeah, at running back, I didn't include all of them because, like, I know like Marshawn Lloyd was a part of that class and Jalen Wright. They're both injured, and like the vibes with them aren't particularly good, and just like limited
Totally
space
honest.
on just like putting people into this sheet. Just want to kind of include the guys who I think are most realistic, could be a starter in the upcoming weeks.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so we are currently at about a minute and a half left remaining on this meeting. This is going to have to be a second part for sure, maybe even a third, depending on how much we yap. So, thank you all for listening to part one. Uh, Make sure to stay tuned and listen to part two.
Go Cows.